one of the most open secrets of spells that are being cast upon the collective is what we know as karmic retribution. But karmic retribution gets confused a lot with revelation of the method. So I'm going to be explaining the difference between these two and exactly what karmic retribution is. In my video, How Our Consciousness is Used to Create Reality, I talk about how the collective subconscious is tapped into and programmed to create negative timelines with our own free will and with our own sovereignty by giving our consent to have these negative timelines created, even though we don't actually realize we're giving our consent. So when this is happening, this is called revelation of the method, because the method is being revealed to us. And it's up to us now to not give our consent, or by giving our consent unknowingly, by simply not taking actions from our sovereignty and not taking actions from our awareness to not sign off on those timelines. So it's one of those things that happen by default. And this is a theme that you will constantly see happening when it comes to reality being created, whether it's our personal individual reality or whether it's collective realities. You will notice that there are default settings, and it's up to us to figure out and become aware of what those default settings are. Revelation of the method is the key and core default setting of this reality. If we don't recognize when we're being programmed and then do something actively, meaning taking an action that's in our sovereignty to stop that programming, then by default, we have given our free will consent away to creating that, even if we're not taking actions towards the creation of that, because at that point, it's our subconscious giving the consent away for our energy to go into that. So basically, another way of saying all of this is that if we do not become sovereign, then we by default give our energy away to those who will take it and will use our free will for their means. So, where does karmic retribution fit into all of this? Karmic retribution is one step more effed up than everything that I just described. So we could look at revelation of the method on one hand, and then karmic retribution on the other hand. And they're distinct branches, but they have similarities and they even overlap. So when it comes to specifically karmic retribution, what you're looking at is a whole art or a whole method at getting people to become your puppets. That's what karmic retribution is really about. It's about this third step, which is more than just tapping into your subconscious and therefore siphoning your thought and your emotions. This third step is what we could consider more important, and that is action. So when it comes to karmic retribution, you're no longer just passively recruited into creating reality. You are actively recruited into creating reality. Actively recruited into creating reality means that karmic retribution needs you to take an action on the powers that were's behalf. So what they're doing is manipulating people, just like wind-up toys. They're winding them up, but then it's up to the toy to go around walking and taking those actions. And that's what karmic retribution is about. It is when the elite, it is when the powers that were, whatever you want to call them, it is when they make people do their bidding for them, because then their hands are clean of the third and most important step, the step that will incur the most karma. So when a person takes an action on behalf of an order that was given by the powers that were, by the elite, that is karmic retribution. And the military-industrial complex, but specifically the military, is the biggest karmic acquirers of karmic retribution. because they are taking the action. And whoever is the one that commits the action is the one that the karma gets linked to. So the elite or the powers that were, they know that. They know that if you can manipulate a person into doing the action, the deed, then that is the one who's ultimately responsible for the karmic burden of that action and that deed. If you'd like to know more about this, you can watch my video, The Lost Eighth Hermetic Principle, because the Lost Eighth Hermetic Principle is all about action. So it's great that we all know in this spirit of this age about how important and powerful our thoughts are and the mental body, as well as the emotional body and the magnetism that it holds and attracts. But what's less known is the thing that one would think is most apparent, which is actions are responsible for creation. And actions are what's known as karma, which is why this whole method is called Karmic Retribution. Because personally, I would think of Karmic Retribution as meaning something about balancing the scales, but it's not in this case. It's the complete opposite. It's unbalancing the scales of karma to a very extreme degree. So Karmic Retribution is when you get other people to commit the crime for you. And when you get other people to be your little wind-up toys, to be your puppets, then ultimately it does not matter what was said or what was done to recruit others into taking on the karmic debt for their agenda. So revelation of the method is the passive form of creating reality because it is done through programming our subconscious. So it is the yin polarity. But karmic retribution is the active form of creating reality because we use our free will to perform an action that absorbs the debt for the powers that were. So that is the yang polarity of reality creation. Isn't that poetic? The latter depends on telling intentional lies, and the former depends on a half-truth. If love is consciousness, then evil is truly ignorance. Universal consciousness sees all of us as the creator because all of us are the creator. So universal consciousness knows that all of us, being the creator, are sovereign. And because we are sovereign, universal consciousness does not look at a crime that's being committed and then go, well, that person wasn't responsible for their actions, so I'm going to give the karma to the person who manipulated them into that action. That's not the way that being a sovereign works. So if the universe is giving karmic retribution, which is justice, that's what karmic retribution means. It's delivering justice to someone somewhere. So if karmic retribution is giving a person the karma, the justice of that action, that means that the person or the people or the organizations or the cabal that are manipulating everyone into doing their actions, committing their crimes for them, still incur karma, but just to a way lesser degree. It's the same as if a person is manipulative and manipulating someone. Does that mean that they're not going to incur any karma? Of course they are, because they were acting in a manipulative way. Karma governs every layer of reality. It governs our speech, it governs our thoughts, it governs our emotions, it governs our subconscious. It governs everything that we emit, everything that we are emanating out into our reality is governed by karma, but especially our actions. So karma isn't a bad guy, not at all. You want karma, at least here, governing this reality. So when it comes to what karma means in karmic retribution, what I'm talking about, it's that final, most important ingredient in the equation, which is the thing that is being done, the actual last step, the one that brought something from the pre-manifested form, which was thought, into physical reality, and that is action. So when I'm talking about karmic retribution, I'm talking about any field that is being told an order, and that person is taking on that order, therefore taking on the karma that comes with that order of doing something against someone else's sovereignty, against someone else's will. So a person can lie all they want about the reasons why the action needs to be done. But if they're lying and a person is taking out those actions for them, then karma, the universe, is giving the karmic debt to the person who is delivering the action, to the person who did the action, regardless. This is key. Regardless if that person took that action because they were told lies. So even though there's a person telling these people lies, the person who did the action is the one that is the most responsible for the karmic debt. And the people who are telling the lies to people in order for those other people to do those actions, to do those biddings, still incur karma. It's just at a lesser degree. And in order to think of this in a really personable way so that we can understand it better, just think about in a personal setting. If you were lied to, or if you lied to someone, do you automatically think that because you didn't violently harm someone that there's not karma? One would think that no, of course you know that there's some sort of karma. But the more aggressive those actions are taken, we all kind of can put two and two together. We know that the more karmic debt. So that's why karmic retribution is the number one way. It's the number one method that reality is co-opted, that reality is manipulated, because revelation of the method is based on passively being as a individual sovereign being. We are passively creating reality through our thoughts, through our emotions that are being tapped into by our subconscious. So our subconscious is getting hacked. But karmic retribution actually is not passive at all. It's the opposite of passive. It is the active form of manipulation. So when it's in its active form of manipulation, now there's an actual large karmic debt that the people who are carrying out those actions are taking. So we can look at the military-industrial complex as having a bunch of karmic debt dumped on them consistently. So whether we're patting somebody down before they go on a big flying bird, or we're invading a certain region in order for our safety and our freedom, these are all different ways that we become vessels. We actually become vessels. We become puppets for acting out heinous deeds, heinous karma. And then we get the karmic debt. Even if we go, well, I was just following orders. No, because karma knows that we are sovereign. So we can pretend that we don't know anything and that we're not responsible, but karma and the universe knows who's responsible. It's the one who did the action. So the ones who said the thing, the ones who said the lies, they still get karma, but once again, it's not the giant debt that the ones who committed the deed will absorb. So why did karmic retribution get so confusing with revelation of the method in the first place? It's because we don't like to admit to ourselves harsh truths. So when we learn about things that are very hard for us to grapple with, like karmic retribution, sometimes we need to modify it. Sometimes we need to change it so that our mind can accept it. And accepting that karmic retribution is something that applies to something so core to our own programming, such as the military-industrial complex, parts of our mind try to protect ourselves from that truth. So what they do is they change it. They change what karmic retribution really is, because if they accepted what it really was, they would have to face the industries in this reality that they are still supporting and defending. But the wild thing about karmic retribution is that karmic retribution isn't exactly the biggest point to why the elite or why the powers that were make people do their bidding. The biggest reason that the elite make people do their bidding by telling them lies or by giving them scarcity consciousness and therefore believing that they don't have any other options for jobs in order to do those deeds. It's because there's an extra spicy flavor of trauma that goes into the reality creation. What I mean by this is when you get one person to inflict harm or to inflict force on another person, what you're doing is actually having somebody who's a victim or somebody who's a prisoner themselves. And what they're doing is restricting another prisoner. So you have a victim who's victimizing another victim. And when you get victims themselves to victimize other victims, they create a collective experience that is entirely hypnotized into thinking that they are the true authority. So what all of this karmic retribution, revelation of the method really is about is validating their authority over ours and giving our sovereignty away into their authority. So what is the takeaway from all of this? Does this mean we're doomed? Not at all. Because the moment that we understand what karmic retribution is and what revelation of the method is, we stop lending our energy and our sovereign creator power to those creations. We start taking back our energy and putting that into conscious actions, meaning actions that reflect the paradigm that we want to create, that we choose to create. And that is what makes the old systems obsolete. I hope this has helped explain the most effed up concept ever. No one wins in this one. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.